You're here on a Saturday night to take responsibility for our country's future. That makes you very, very patriotic.
If there's one thing the United States stands for, America, it's free speech, unfettered free speech. However, the last 10 to 15 years, America has become so politically correct and so afraid of free speech that we're on the verge of extinguishing free speech in this country. President Bush really has set the standard for modern times. In his Presidential Advance Manual, there's all kinds of tactics that the Secret Service and the President's Royal Guard use to do away with free speech at presidential events. One specific tactic in the President's Advance Manual are designated free speech zones that are supposedly set up by local law enforcement, which again will be out of view of the President. So what the President of the United States has created is roving no free speech zones where people can't even be heard. And what it does, it completely denies the concept of free speech as we have known it.
I am sick and tired of people who say that if you debate and you disagree with this administration, somehow you're not patriotic. And we should stand up and say, we are Americans and we have a right to debate and disagree with any administration.
What value system is that? I think it's un-American. I think it's un-American.
In a USA Today op-ed, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, they say it's an ugly campaign is underway, not merely to misrepresent the health insurance reform legislation, but to disrupt civil dialogue. These disruptions are occurring because opponents are afraid not just of differing views, but of the facts themselves. Drowning out opposing views is simply un-American.
I remember, that unforgettable day, that terrible day when American soldiers came to the front door of our house to order us out. He carried a bayoneted rifle, and I was 4 years old at the time. And simply because we happened to look like the people who bombed Pearl Harbor, there were no charges, there were no trials, no due process. We were summarily rounded up and put into these barbed wire, sentry tower, machine guns pointed. When I made the night runs to the latrine, searchlights followed me. It was a concentration camp, pure and simple. The euphemism was relocation center. It sounds very innocuous. Machine guns pointed at us. Armed soldiers, barbed wire. I could see the barbed wire fence and the sentry towers and the machine gun right outside my schoolhouse window as I recited the words, "with liberty and justice for all." It was a dark chapter in American history.
Imagine if your family was awakened in the middle of the night by a team of federal officers. Well, that's exactly what happened to a woman and her children in Granville County.
March 5th, around 10 o'clock in the evening, Annette Lundaby says 10 armed FBI agents, along with 3 local officers, stormed her home looking for her son. They handcuffed him and presented her with a search warrant.
They said that he was being arrested for making numerous bomb threats.
Annette Lundaby told the officers that someone stole her son's IP address and used it to make crank calls through the internet, making it look like the calls had originated from her home. She says the FBI's extensive search of her home turned up nothing.
No bomb-making materials. They didn't find anything.
The teenager was taken to a juvenile facility in Indiana, where the bomb threat was supposedly made. His mother has had little access to him since his arrest. She says the Patriot Act stripped her son of his right to due process.
And we have no rights under the Patriot Act to even defend them, because the Patriot Act supersedes, basically, is superseding the Constitution. Never in my worst nightmare did I ever think that it would be my own government that I would have to protect my children from. This is the United States, and I feel like I live in a third world country now. Know that they can come and take anyone in your family away, even your children. And they don't have to be guilty.
One of the most recent attacks on free speech is the Democratic National Convention. Cages made of chicken wire wire and chain link fence in which all protesters, anyone that wants to exercise free speech at the Democratic National Convention, they have to get inside these cages. The thing about these cages is not only are they just cages, much like jails, but they're 2 football fields away from access to the delegates. So the delegates will never know they're even there. And if anybody wants to exercise their free speech outside of that area, they will be arrested. If you think about it, if you take a picture of the free speech zones as they're being set up now with the cages, and compare it to a picture of the concentration camps, they look very similar. In fact, the idea that the Nazis had in their concentration camps and the Soviets when they had their gulags, and any regimes the world over now that still use concentration camps, and they do exist, is to take dangerous individuals and isolate them so they can be controlled.
If George Bush had had the gall to propose changing the laws of the United States to allow people to be detained for long periods without even the intention of putting them on trial, progressives across the nation would be howling that the fascist hordes were at the gates, and they would be right. Even the do-nothing, scared of nearly everything Congressional Black Caucus would be up in arms. George Bush and Dick Cheney empowered to imprison people without trial? Progressives everywhere would be justified in crying out against the threat to civilization as we know it. But when Barack Obama proposed the very same thing, preventive detention without trial, there was a relative silence. People pretended it was just another Wednesday. Calling for preventive detention in the United States is like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. No nation in the industrial world has a history more entwined with detention of whole classes of people than the United States. Japanese Americans were detained for no crime but their ethnicity. Native Americans, those that were not killed outright, were forcibly detained on reservations that were in fact open-air prisons. Slavery was the greatest detention of all, a lifetime of house or field arrest at hard labor with no prospect of escape for oneself or one's children. Detention without trial for centuries. Nothing is certain. On this issue, Obama has proven himself to be worse than George Bush.
What was very surprising was to hear President Obama talk about what he called prolonged detention, but what I think we can all safely say is preventive detention moving forward. The idea of detaining people not because they've committed a crime, but because of their general dangerousness or that they may commit a crime in the future. That's something that the documents that President Obama was standing in front of, particularly the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, simply doesn't permit. When I heard that in his speech, I was deeply, deeply shocked that he would go in that direction.
It's the message that's feared here. It's the message that the Nazis feared. It's the message that the Soviets feared. It's the message that the Chinese fear now. It's the message that the North Koreans fear now. And that's why they curtail free speech. Obviously, the creation of free speech zones and caging people who want to exercise free speech goes against the entire concept of our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and what the revolutionary generation stood for.
What value system is that? I think it's un-American. I think it's un-American.
A hypocrite. You can't say you believe in free speech and then...
I think it's un-American. I think it's un-American. You are very special people. You're here on a Saturday night to take responsibility for our country's future. That makes you very, very patriotic.
Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
We have to remember that free speech, the first word in that phrase, free speech, is free.
Turn them off! This is a theater of the absurd, my friends. This is the theater of the absurd.